Alright, today I'm going to go over management of your materials, and more specifically things like character sheets, DM notes. This could also go over things like books, your battle mats, your minis, but more specifically character sheets and DM materials, because what I've noticed is there is a very large stance, especially with older gamers, where classical means of running a game, such as physical copies of books, pencil and paper, the battle mat, and minis, are struggling against, I should say, more modern approaches to the tabletop RPG experience, such as various online programs, Roll20 being a very popular one that's rising, where you can take everything to a virtual setting. And I'll be honest, I utilize such programs myself, where I have a big screen that has replaced the battle mat. It puts more space on the table for players to do various things. But in regards to material specifically, what you have is you have the concept where character sheets get lost, you don't know where you placed random encounter notes or treasure for that encounter, and it becomes bothersome. I can't tell you how many times, in fact it has happened very recently, that character sheets are getting lost, or in my case, a player forgot that I didn't keep her character sheet, and she ended up having to spend half the night off the game while she realized it was in her possession the entire time. Now, there are ways to resolve this, and as much as people want to stick to the classic pen and paper feel, there is a compromise to be had there. If you do not want to convert exclusively to the online experience that programs such as Roll20 provide, the middle ground would be to have a scanned copy of all the players' character sheets and any notes you may want to make on hard copy. Now, this may seem tedious to some, and in case of players, there are many players that will cry it's an invasion of privacy to have a copy of their character sheet, because you may have established a precedence that players can keep information from you. But if you're going to establish that that is a right of the players, that's something I would be getting into in a whole nother video, but you're putting yourself at the disadvantage that should their materials not be accessible to them for whatever reason, then you do not have a backup copy that can easily be printed and for them to use in the interim. And that's something I'm starting to do, and I'm finding it to be very handy, where if somebody misplaces their character sheet, I have a copy on hand that they can reference for their own use. And I do a lot of personal writing when I'm not immediately in front of my computer. The fact that I can scan it not only to my hard drive, but also to my cloud storage, makes it, at my discretion, accessible to me or accessible to all of my players, because my gaming, my public folder in my cloud storage is devoted exclusively to gaming. So if you happen to be in my group, you have access to my public folder in my cloud storage, and thus any gaming materials I may provide that would be publicly accessible are on there. And it does provide also another benefit when you provide digital copies. If you happen to buy PDFs from the various companies that provide gaming material in addition to physical copies, then you can also, via cloud storage, make that accessible to your entire group. And it makes handling the game a lot easier when, even if they don't have a physical copy, they can tap into that cloud storage and look at that material when there may not be enough physical copies to go around the table. So, being in the digital age, being in the age of ever-advancing technology, is having its benefits, and you don't necessarily have to compromise the traditional feel. One thing I like to do with storage of information is I like to draw on the battle mat, because using programs such as Roll20, it can become a bit of a task to create complex and detailed maps that look pretty. So what I'll simply do is I'll draw on the battle mat anything I want my players to potentially experience. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is Gilgamesh. He is one of 2 mascots, and a little dynamic of my gaming experience is that I will permit the group a certain amount of mascot rerolls a session. And when they want to invoke the mascot reroll, I will take what they rolled and place it on the ground in front of the kitties, and if the kitty's bad at it within 10 seconds, they get to keep that reroll. It's a bit of a gamble, a lot of fun, an interesting dynamic I like to apply to the game. But back to what I was saying, I will take these maps that I put on the battle mat and then put them on Roll20 for use of either later or the very session I plan on running. And thus I have a complete record of anything I drew. And with that, you can simply magnify or adjust as you need to fit it onto a map on a digital screen, a digital format. Now, even if you don't use a program such as Roll20, you can still utilize taking pictures and storing them on a hard drive for memorization so that you have access to it later if you want to redraw it. Because aside from that, the most effective way to keep a map you've drawn on the battle mat is to make buy paper battle mats and then keep them set aside. Modern technology is becoming increasingly more efficient for a variety of storage purposes. There's no reason why we can't apply it for gaming. So just to run a quick summary of what I've covered so far, you can use it to store DM information, you can use it to store character sheets, you can use it to store maps. And simply taking a picture of it, in the case of it's the battle mat, or scanning it, and what that does is it gives you a digital copy that you can either store privately, or you can spend a little bit, like I spend $10 a month, and not only do I gain access to a terabyte of cloud storage, but I also gain access to an entire series of word processing systems such as Microsoft Word, Microsoft OneNote, and it makes it all the easier for me to keep track of all of my notes in gaming session. Now, I am in no way endorsed or in any type of tie with these companies, but they have done me a lot of good in making my gaming experience more efficient. So look at what works for you, but electronic storage of information always means that as long as you have access to that hard drive, or in case of cloud storage, as long as you have your login information, you have access to something that can't otherwise get lost. And it resolves a problem that older generations of gamers had to deal with time and time again. Because it doesn't matter how efficient you are at keeping track of these things, you're more likely to lose a physical copy than you are to lose a digital one. That's just my 2 thoughts on the application of digital storage in tabletop gaming. If you guys thought this video was informative, please subscribe, and you'll see more of my stuff as I come along. Happy adventures, people.